amazing elected officials and candidates who want to do well for this community, for everyone in this community. Republican, Democrat, Independent, no me importa, right? The differences right now do not matter. It is how we come together and do great things. I know that's what Vicente has been doing in Congress. It's what he will do in this next term once we put him back there in office. And it's what I want to do as the governor. This is a chance. In fact, it might be our last chance to come together, but we are deeply divided at this point. And make sure we do the big things by and for one another. You think about what we have been through over the last 8 years and where 2 terms of Greg Abbott has brought us. We are now paying some of the highest property taxes in the United States of America. In fact, the average taxpayer in this state pays more in taxes than the folks in California. It used to be the other way around. We might start seeing people leave Texas for that state if we don't get it under control. Last February, the temperature dropped, your lights wouldn't turn on, your heat stopped running, the water stopped flowing because it was frozen in your pipes. More than 700 of our fellow Texans lost their lives in a totally preventable disaster because Greg Abbott was warned year after year that our grid had underlying vulnerabilities and didn't do a thing. In fact, while you were freezing in your homes here, he was allowing his best buddies and top campaign contributors to make billions of dollars off of the suffering of our fellow Texans. Ordered the price of electricity sold at its highest allowable rate. Gas soon started trading at 200 times what it had sold for the day before. That is why you are paying higher electricity bills today, at least $45 more per month than before Greg Abbott's grid failure. And the grid is still not fixed going into this next winter. God only knows what will happen if that man is returned to power. It has been 23 weeks since 19 children and their 2 teachers were taken from us in Uvalde, Texas. Absolutely defenseless against someone who could legally purchase at the age of 18 not 1, but 2 AR-15s, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and use a weapon originally designed for use in war in Vietnam to kill an enemy soldier at 500 yards and penetrate that steel helmet against children who were not but 5 feet away from him, who had nothing on their heads except for a baseball cap. Those kids were defenseless against him. They were defenseless against a governor who has yet to do anything, despite the fact that we have 5 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history in this state in just the last 5 years. Gun violence is now the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in the state of Texas. I've got 2 teenagers and a 12-year-old at home in El Paso. I think about them every minute of the waking day, and they realize, as I do, that 23 weeks after Uvalde, not a single thing has been changed to make it any less likely that they or any other child in any other classroom meets the same fate as those kids. And then I think about this. In this state that produced the women who prevailed upon an all-male United States Supreme Court in 1973 to protect the right to privacy so that you can make very personal, often very painful decisions on your own without government intervention or intrusion. In other words, those Texas women won freedom in Roe versus Wade. In this state, we have the most extreme ban in America. Begins at conception, no exception for rape, no exception for the life of the mother, no exception for incest, and it takes place in a state that leads the nation in the rate of maternal mortality. This will certainly cause more suffering and more death, and needlessly so. And lastly, and the thing that makes everything else possible, our democracy and the right to vote is under attack here more than it is anywhere else in the country. It is harder to cast a ballot. It's harder to get your name on the rolls to be registered in Texas than anywhere else. And to put a point to it, in March, during our primary elections, a 95-year-old World War II veteran, in other words, a guy who was willing to give his life in 1944 on those beaches in Normandy to defeat fascism half a world away, to defend democracy here at home, had his ballot by mail rejected in Texas, not once, but 3 separate times. That guy who was willing to die for our right to vote could not even vote in this state, and there's no one among us who's more earned the right than that veteran has. We've got to make sure that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you can freely and fairly choose those who will serve you in elected positions of public trust. But against those challenges, to which you might be tempted to succumb or submit, to say, you know what, I guess this is the price of living and dying in the state of Texas, you instead have chosen to be here, to stand and be counted at this defining moment of truth and to make sure that we come through. You want to come through for yourself, for your family, and especially for the youngest among us. These kids, like my kids back home in El Paso, they don't get a vote. They don't get a voice in this election, but through the actions that we take today and the commitments that we make over the remaining 8 days of this election. And that democracy, which has marginalized and disenfranchised so many millions of our fellow Texans, many hundreds of thousands of them in the Rio Grande Valley, we have to be the ones who reach out to them and who bring them in. If you'll sign up with this campaign, and we've got volunteers with clipboards, they're holding them up right now, I will put you on the doors of the very targets of voter suppression and voter intimidation, the very people that Greg Abbott and the Republican majority in the legislature do not want to vote in this election. And we will bring them in together and ensure that they form the margin of victory when we win this on election night. You all with me? Yeah! Look, if you will do that with me, then together we will win these elections. Up and down the ballot, every single Democratic candidate who believes in democracy. And when we do, that means that in Texas, women make their own decisions about their own body and their own future. It means that in Texas, we put the lives of our children ahead of the interests of the NRA or the gun lobby. That means that in Texas, school teachers get paid enough not to work a second or a third job to make ends meet.
Oh, yeah.
We give them more valuable classroom time back by canceling the STAR test. And for the retired educators among us, you have not had a cost of living adjustment since the year of our Lord, 2004. When we win this, a cost of living adjustment every single year going forward. We're going to expand Medicaid, bring back $10 billion of your federal income taxes that you paid up to Washington, D.C., that are now going to every other state except for Texas. We bring them down here. And in the least insured part of the least insured state, we hire more providers. We educate our young people to be the doctors and physicians and mental health care providers, nurses and frontline health care workers. We prioritize public health, and we make sure that we no longer lead the nation in diabetes deaths for children as we do today. We connect people with the care that guarantees that they're healthy enough and well enough to live to their full potential. And the kicker is, when we bring this money back, we can lower the property taxes in our communities.
Yeah.
What do you think? But this is dependent on all of us doing all we can with what we have right here at this moment. Let me leave you with this thought. I'm well aware, as I see some of those who served our country in uniform, that we would not be here but for the sacrifices of those who preceded us. You go all the way back to the beginning of this country in 1776, this foundational premise that we're all created equally, we should all be treated equally under the law. We never really achieved that, but I'd like to think that we never stopped fighting for it. And I think about those who've given their lives for the realization of this idea. Back in 1776, again in 1865, at that courthouse in Appomattox, in 1965, when John Lewis willingly risked his life crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge to force LBJ to sign the Voting Rights Act into law, we are the heirs to their service, to their sacrifice, to their struggle. And what we do with this great inheritance that has been bequeathed to all of us will determine our future and define us in the eyes of our kids and the generations to come. We must come through for them right now. So I ask you, win. We must all knock on those doors, knowing that to win, as Vicente said, we must talk to the members of our family, our neighbors, our classmates, our colleagues, the people that we follow and who follow us on social media, and make sure that they vote, knowing that we've got to do all that we can with what we have. I ask you, are you ready to win? Yeah! And all your supporters here, here's a little gift. Thank you for the great work that you're doing. Keep on the fight.
Mario, Beto, eres único, Beto, eres único.
Pues no que yo era el único.
Guys, we have tacos and waters and drinks on that counter. And fajitas. I'll get you. You get me. Qué bien, qué
They're beholden to them.